So rheumatoid arthritis is one of the connective tissue disorders which is very frequently associated with interstitial lung disease. So this is almost 60% associated with interstitial lung disease. So always there is a multidisciplinary approach. Okay, rheumatoid arthritis patient will be treated by a rheumatologist plus a pulmonary medicine physician also. Okay, so 60% of the cases are associated with ILDs, and if there is presence of anti-CCP antibodies, there is increased risk of lung parenchymal abnormalities. Okay, so what will be the first presentation in RILD? That is your pleurisy and pleural effusion. Okay, so this pleurisy and pleural effusion, it can be either unilateral or it can be bilateral. This pleural effusion will be exudative. Okay, and in chronic conditions, if it is a long-standing rheumatoid arthritis with pleural effusion, there will be increase in cholesterol concentration. Okay. Chronic condition will lead to cholesterol concentration. Since it is exudative, pH will be less than 7.2. And why pH is less than 7.2? Because there is some parenchymal changes in rheumatoid arthritis, because of which there is impairment of carbon dioxide exist from the pleural space. So there is impairment of CO2 exit from pleural space. Okay, so certain parenchymal abnormalities develop in rheumatoid arthritis that carbon dioxide cannot exit out from the pleural space. Fourth, WBC count becomes more than 15,000 cells per mmQ, and this will be mostly neutrophilic predominant and mononuclear leukocytes. Okay. Then fifth, there is increase in rheumatic factor in the pleural fluid, and complement levels are decreased in the pleural fluid. So complement levels are decreased, rheumatoid factor is increased. Okay. Sixth, there is defect in glucose transport in rheumatoid arthritis. So defect in glucose transport. Because of this, there will be decrease in pleural fluid glucose levels. This is characteristic features of rheumatoid arthritis. The glucose level will be decreased, and in 40% of these patients, the glucose level will be as low as less than 10 milligram per deciliter. Okay, and in 75% of the patients, it will be less than 50 milligram per deciliter. So this is one of the characteristic feature of rheumatoid pleural effusion, that there is a defect in glucose transport, because of which the pleural fluid glucose level will decrease, and 75% of the patient will have less than 50 milligram per deciliter. 40% of the patient will have less than 10 milligram per deciliter. When you look at the cytology of these pleural fluid, there will be necrotic debris. There can be spindle-shaped macrophages. And there will be multinucleated histiocytes. So these necrotic debris with spindle-shaped histiocytes, with macrophages, with multinucleated histiocyte. These are characteristic features of a rheumatic effusion on cytology. So this is again a characteristic feature of rheumatoid effusion on cytology. Occasionally, you can find necrobiotic nodules. That is also called as rheumatoid nodules. Okay. And if these necrobiotic nodules, they rupture, the patient will present with spontaneous pneumothorax. Okay. Role of corticosteroids not given in each and every rheumatic pleural effusion. You have to give corticosteroid to treat the articular disease, that is rheumatic disease, not for pleural effusion. So this is used for active articular disease only. Okay. Now, this was about pleural effusion. The second lesion, there can be pulmonary vascular disease. Okay. And this is rare, not much common in case of rheumatic pleural effusion. Okay. One thing that I was talking about, necrobiotic, that is rheumatoid nodule that you find occasionally. So these necrobiotic rheumatoid nodule, they are not present in all. They are seen only in 1% of rheumatoid population. I have only seen once or twice in my clinical career till now, the rheumatoid nodules. Okay. Now, if these rheumatoid nodules are present, they are more common in males and smokers. If present, they are associated with active joint disease, that is active rheumatoid arthritis also, so active articular disease. So these require steroids, and these will present with high rheumatoid factor. Okay. These can be either single or can be multiple, and there is usually upper zone or mid zone predominance. Okay. 50% of these rheumatoid nodules, they will undergo cavitation. So 50% of these rheumatoid nodules, they will undergo cavitation. And why they undergo cavitation? Because of the activity of large amount of proteolytic enzymes. So large amount of proteolytic enzymes are being present here, and hence the nodules will land up into cavity formation. And sometimes there will be remaining 50%, there will be spontaneous resolution. One more important point associated with rheumatoid effusion is Kaplan syndrome. What is Kaplan syndrome? This is rheumatoid arthritis associated with coal miners pneumoconiosis. So that is rheumatoid arthritis with pneumoconiosis. Okay. And there will be sudden appearance of discrete nodules. Again, primarily in the upper lobe involvement, and these are histologically identical to your rheumatoid necrobiotic nodules. So they are histological identical to necrobiotic nodules. Fourth disease associated with rheumatoid arthritis is your interstitial lung disease. So now again, interstitial lung disease, it is more common in males as compared to females. The ratio is 3:1 ratio. And the most common pattern is UIP or NSIP, but UIP is more present in rheumatoid arthritis. Along with simple ILD, it can also present with certain complications like organizing pneumonias, LIP, that is lymphocytic interstitial pneumonias, and third, it can associated with, that is this LIP associated with rheumatoid arthritis with Sjogren syndrome. This will present as LIP. Okay. Other than lungs, there can be other system involvement also in rheumatoid. There will be subcutaneous nodules on skin. Your heart can also be involved. There can be pericardial effusion. Okay. There can be anemia. And as we have already seen, most commonly it will be normocytic normochromic anemia. Okay. What is Felty syndrome? So Felty syndrome is nodular rheumatoid arthritis with neutropenia with splenomegaly. Okay. So this is the complete lung involvement in case of rheumatoid arthritis. Okay. Management part, they are not much interested because management, we have to manage the arthritic part itself. Okay. So as you all know, what is the management of rheumatoid arthritis? It is your methotrexate. The dose is 15 milligram per week. And along with this, you have to give folinic acid. Okay. Then you can also give corticosteroids. Okay. If the patient has come in acute exacerbation of RA-ILD, then you will have to give pulse steroid, that is 1 gram per day, in case of acute exacerbation of RA-ILD. Okay, plus oral steroid you have to give to treat the articular disease. Once you are treating the articular disease with steroid, your pleural effusion will also automatically resolve. So there will be resolution of effusion also along with this. Okay. You can also try HCQ 200 milligram BD dose, but if there is no improvement in HCQ, shift to methotrexate. So first we start with HCQs and then we shift to methotrexate, and we give indomethacin. Okay, 75 milligram 1 OD. So this is how you have to write the answer if the question is being asked with RA related to lung disease. So they had asked RA-ILD, but I have explained everything. Yeah, all the pleural complications of rheumatoid arthritis. The question that was asked was pleural complications of rheumatoid arthritis. So take 2 minutes break and then we'll start with one more topic today. And what next topic I'll be taking is few small topics I'll be taking today. Corticosteroids in the management of tuberculosis. This topic will start after a 2-minute short break. Lactating women. Okay. So, as we all know, we have drug-resistant tuberculosis and drug-sensitive tuberculosis. So, important points we'll highlight. First, for drug sensitivity tuberculosis. So, as we all know, the entire 4-drug regimen is safer. So, standard regimen, that is HRZE for 2 months, followed by HRE for next 4 months. This can be given. But don't forget to remember, add pyridoxine also in pregnant females. Why to add pyridoxine? So as to prevent neurotoxicity to the fetus. Okay, so pyridoxine is very important in this. Okay, do an ultrasound at 18 to 22 weeks of pregnancy. Why? To look for any congenital anomaly. Okay, if a chest x-ray is at all required, if it is required, do it with proper shielding. So proper shield and lead apron. The x-ray needs to be done. Fifth, once the baby has been delivered, post-delivery, both microbiological and histopathological examination of placenta needs to be done, so as to find out whether there is any sort of transfer to the child, and you have to rule out neonatal tuberculosis. Okay, and once this neonatal tuberculosis has been ruled out, after ruling out this neonatal tuberculosis, sixth, start INH prophylaxis immediately to the newborn. So immediately to the newborn. And what is the dose of isoniazid prophylaxis? It is 10 milligram per kg per day. Okay. And seventh, don't stop breastfeeding. Breastfeeding should continue. Okay, so these are the important points for drug sensitive tuberculosis. And the second part is drug resistant tuberculosis. Now, if it is a drug resistant tuberculosis, first and foremost thing, whether the child is less than 20 weeks. If it is less than 20 weeks, advise for medical termination of pregnancy. Why? For mother and child safety. So in view of severe risk to both mother and fetus. Okay, so there is a high risk to both mother and fetus, so you have to go for MTP. If it is more than 20 weeks or the patient is unwilling for MTP, MTP, they are not willing for MTP. So now you have to act smartly. So first of all, you have to explain the risk to mother and the fetus. So risk to mother and fetus should be clearly explained. So there should be an appropriate counseling. Plus, there should be an informed decision making. plus consent to be taken in written, not informed consent, there should be written consent, and plus Nikshay data should be managed. So Nikshay data management is required. Okay, so before starting the treatment, these many protocols needs to be followed strictly. So you have to first explain the risk to mother and the fetus, appropriate counseling, informed decision making, written consent, Nikshay data management. Everything is required. After doing this, you have to modify the regimen. So modify the all oral longer regimen. So you cannot give the entire all oral longer regimen because cycloserine is phytotoxic, ethionamide is phytotoxic. So you have to remove all these phytotoxic drugs. And third important thing, delivery should be done at the district hospital. So delivery should be done at district hospital where there is an NICU facility. So where there is NICU facility. So delivery should be done here. Okay. Previously we were using second line injectables, which have now no longer being used in the treatment. But if still you want to use second line injectables, that is your kanamycin and all, they are contraindicated throughout the pregnancy. वैसे भी अब रेजिमेन में से हट गए हैं, but पहले यूज होते थे. They are contraindicated throughout the pregnancy. Why? Because they affect on the 8th nerve of the fetus, that is auditory defect will occur. So auditory defect to the, this is 8th nerve, auditory defect to the fetus. Now, if the MTP has been done, well and good. So after MTP, you can start either with the shorter regimen or longer regimen. Any regimen you can start. But you have to do a pre-treatment evaluation with your gynecologist. So pre-treatment evaluation with the gynecologist. Okay. Now, if the MTP has not been done, MTP nahi karaya aapne, or it is more than 20 weeks. So, if first of all, if you are using mono H regimen, that is category 1 तो है नहीं, है ना? It is drug resistant tuberculosis. अब drug resistant में सिर्फ mono H है, तो mono H में you can give your HRZD में H हट जाएगा, plus levofloxacin ऐड कर देते हैं. So this is a safer regimen. So you can continue this regimen. If there is multi-drug resistant and you are using longer regimen, now you have to modify the longer regimen. So in longer regimen, what you can use in pregnancy is bedaquiline. You can use levoflox, linezolid, clofazimine, cycloserine. Okay, so bedaquiline to be given for 6 months. Linezolid, try to reduce the linezolid give the half dose. So half the dose after 6 months of treatment. Okay, and if any of the drug is not tolerated to the patient, if any drug is not tolerating, you can smartly Replace the drug with pyrazinamide. If not, then ethambutol. If not, then you can try with PAS. PAS is also now no longer used very frequently. So the drugs which needs to be avoided is ethionamide. So ethionamide you cannot give it initially. This can be considered after 32 weeks of pregnancy. Okay. And if you are giving a replacement drug with miro-amikacin combination, so this miro-amikacin में amikacin हम पहले use नहीं कर सकते, so this combination should also be considered only in postpartum period. So this should be considered in postpartum period only. Okay. And bedaquiline you are giving for first 6 months. This bedaquiline and delaminid also, this you cannot give, and this is not recommended during lactating period unless the mother is willing to replace your breastfeeding with formula feed. So only case if the mother is willing to give formula feed to the patient, you can give bedaquiline and delaminid if the patient has developed tuberculosis later on and if she's in the lactating period. Otherwise, it should not be used. Okay. Some more important points to remember. If basal TSH level in pre-treatment is deranged, you have to do monthly TSH. So monthly TSH to be done. And once it becomes normal, then you will do quarterly TSH throughout the treatment. Okay. Second, you check the infant also for early evidence of hypothyroidism. And basic ECG monitoring, serum electrolyte monitoring, and CBCs to be done. So this completes your 5 marks topic of management of TB in pregnant and lactating women. People are malpracticing corticosteroids in daily routine also. Okay, so this should not happen. Especially for you, when you're doing in your routine practices, you should know what are the indications of steroid, and steroid should be used in that particular case only. Okay. So this is a very important question for theory as well as for your general practice also, that when not to use corticosteroids. When to use is not important. When not to use is very important. So role of corticosteroids in management of tuberculosis. So first and important indication is your TB meningitis. This TB meningitis, it requires 1 year treatment protocol with AKT. That is your standard regimen HRZE plus HRE. So instead of 6 months, your guideline says that at least for 1 year, that is 12 months, you have to give AKT in case of TB meningitis, and spine tuberculosis, you have to give at least 9 months of 9 months of AKT. Remember these two things. So spine, bone, and joint, at least 9 months, and TB meningitis 12 months. For the rest of the tuberculosis, 6 months is enough. Now, in this case, corticosteroids are required along with AKT. And why corticosteroids are required? To decrease the neurological deficit. Okay, and decrease the mortality. What is the steroid that is being preferred? Dexamethasone, 0.4 milligram per kg per day IV in 3 to 4 divided doses. Okay, or you can also use oral prednisolone, 1 milligram per kg per day, single morning dose, and taper the dose for a total duration of 6 to 8 weeks. Okay, what ideally we follow is the dexamethasone protocol. And what is the dexamethasone protocol? What we follow in our practice, it is we start with IV dexamethasone, 0.4 milligram per kg per day for 2 weeks, followed by, now if in the next 2 weeks the patient has been discharged, you can immediately switch this to oral dexa also. So if a patient is admitted, continue with IV, और if अगर वो discharge हो रहा है 15 दिन के बाद, तो आप उसको oral dexa पे shift कर दो. So this will be 0.3 milligram per kg per day for next 1 week, followed by 0.2 milligram per kg per day for next 1 week, then 4 milligram per day for next 1 week, then 3 milligram per day for next 1 week, then 2 milligram per day for next 1 week, then 1 milligram per day for next 1 week, and then stop. तो कितने वीक्स हो गए? 1 2 3 4 5 6 and 6 plus 2, so total 8 weeks we have given. So this has to begin for at least 8 weeks of treatment. So start with IV dexamethasone, 0.4 milligram per kg per day for 2 weeks. If you are discharging the patient, switch to oral dexa, 0.3, then 0.2, then 4 3 2 1. This is the way you have to very intelligently reduce the dose of Dexona. You follow this protocol in your daily practice also. बहुत हैफेज़ात protocol follow होता है. कोई 8 मिलीग्राम BD यूज करता है, कोई 16 मिलीग्राम TDS यूज करता है, कोई 8 मिलीग्राम TDS यूज करता है, कोई 4 मिलीग्राम BD यूज कर सकता है. So don't do this malpractice. Follow this regimen. 0.4 milligram per kg per day. मतलब stick. You have to stick to this. Okay. Consultant जो randomly use करते हैं, don't follow that protocol. You follow the standard protocol what is written in the textbooks. Okay, so it is to be given for 8 weeks. So this was TB meningitis. Second important indication for this thing is pericardial effusion for steroids. Okay, so in pericardial effusion, you have to use steroids as an adjunct therapy. So it is used as an adjunct therapy to AKT to prevent cardiac complications. And what are the cardiac complications that can occur? There can be cardiac tamponade, which is life-threatening, or there can be pericarditis, and there can be myocarditis. Okay, what is the drug that you are using? So here you are using prednisolone is preferred. The dose is 1 milligram per kg. This has to be given for 4 weeks. So 60 किलो का बंदा है तो you will give 60 मिलीग्राम और 4 हफ्ते मतलब 1 महीने तक सेम 60 मिलीग्राम की डोज चलती रहेगी, followed by 0.5 milligram per kg for next 4 weeks. नेक्स्ट 4 वीक्स. ठीक है, सो अब ये 60 किलो का बंदा है, पहले 1 महीने आपने उसको 60 मिलीग्राम दे दी और अब अगले 1 महीने तक आपको उसको 30 मिलीग्राम देना है, तो यानी कि 2 मंथ हो गए एंड देन टेपर ग्रेजुअली. तो इसका ड्यूरेशन ऑफ स्टेरॉइड्स इज फार लॉन्गर एज कंपेयर टू योर टीबी मेनिंजाइटिस. टीबी मेनिंजाइटिस में भी आइडियली स्टॉप इन 8 वीक्स लुकिंग एट द रिस्पॉन्स, बट यहाँ पे आपको 3 महीने तक कम से कम भी कंटिन्यू रखना पड़ता है. तो टेपर ग्रेजुअली and stop it over next 2 to 4 weeks. ठीक है, तो 60 मिलीग्राम से चालू किया अगर 60 किलो का बंदा है, give 60 मिलीग्राम for 4 weeks, continue it for 4 weeks and उसके बाद reduce it to 0.5 मिलीग्राम per kg for next 4 weeks. तो 2 मंथ का ट्रीटमेंट तो ये फिक्स चलता ही चलता है और उसके बाद नेक्स्ट 2 to 4 weeks में टेपर करके बंद करना है. ठीक है, third, miliary TB. Is it indicated in all miliary TB cases? No. Every miliary doesn't require corticosteroids. Only if it is associated with respiratory failure, severe respiratory failure. And why this respiratory failure? Because of severe ARDS. Patient ventilator पर जाने की नौबत आने वाली है, patient को severe ARDS है, patient severe hypoxemia है patient को, then and then only you have to give corticosteroids. Otherwise, in a stable miliary tuberculosis, never use steroids. And second, the most important indication of steroid in miliary or disseminated TB is adrenal insufficiency. If the patient is having, you measure serum cortisol levels and all, if the patient is having adrenal insufficiency, only these 2 cases, they require steroids. Otherwise, corticosteroids are not indicated in miliary tuberculosis. Third, pleural effusion. Very, very common malpractice. Till today, the physicians are doing, they are using routine AKT. पुराने जमाने के तो chest physicians use करते ही थे, and they are still practicing today, and कुछ youngsters भी use कर रहे हैं. Okay, so is steroid indicated in every pleural effusion? No, no, and no. Never use pleural effusion. जितना भी effusion होगा, AKT से resolve हो जाएगा. Let it resolve with AKT. Don't give unnecessary steroids. Only in cases of chronic pleural adhesions, बहुत पुराना इफ्यूजन पड़ा हुआ है, बहुत पुराना कलेक्शन पड़ा हुआ है एंड अधेशंस हो चुके हैं, थिकनिंग हो चुकी है. कैसे पता चलेगी? अल्ट्रासाउंड करके देखोगे, एक्सरे से नहीं पता चलेगा हमेशा. तो अल्ट्रासाउंड करके देखोगे बहुत ज्यादा अधेशंस है, सेप्टेशंस है, थिकनिंग है, उसको तोड़ने के लिए यू कैन गिव स्टेरॉइड्स, बट अदरवाइज नो स्टेरॉइड्स. ओके, एंड not recommended for pleural tuberculosis. There is no data which is showing that major improvement has come with steroid. वो अपने आप AKT से infusion resolve हो जाता है. Third, sorry, 3 तो हो गए. Fourth, endobronchial TB. So endobronchial TB में yes, corticosteroids are important. So these corticosteroids in case of endobronchial TB, they are used to decrease the inflammation and decrease the pressure. And क्यों inflammation और pressure यहाँ पे आपको decrease करने की जरूरत है? क्योंकि endobronchial है, bronchus को already obstruct कर रखा है. There will be severe bronchial compression. So to prevent severe bronchial compression हो गया तो patient stridor में चला जाएगा, sudden death हो जाएगी. So to prevent the severe bronchial compression, to decrease the inflammation, decrease the pressures, plus prevent the formation of endobronchial fibrosis, वहाँ पे fibrosis ना हो जाए, तो इसलिए यहाँ पे स्टेरॉइड्स इंडिकेटेड है. What steroid is indicated here? Again, prednisolone is recommended. Yes, prednisolone is recommended. The dose is 1 milligram per kg per day to be given for 4 to 6 weeks. यानी कि 1-1.5 महीने तक आपने दिया, and then slowly taper it. So slow tapering. Okay. And this endobronchial tuberculosis, there are 5 to 6 classifications of endobronchial TB. जब ये क्वेश्चन आएगा तब हम डिटेल में जाएंगे, अभी वो डिटेल क्लासिफिकेशन में नहीं जाएंगे, बट उसके एक कैटेगरी होती है एंडोब्रोंकियल ट्यूबरक्लोसिस की, इडिमेटस, हाइपरिमिक, एक्टिवली केजिएटिंग एंड ट्यूमरस टाइप्स. ये टाइप्स के जो एंडोब्रोंकियल टीबी होते हैं, इनमें there are high chances कि बहुत early there can be formation of tracheobronchial stenosis. So to prevent this tracheobronchial stenosis in these type of endobronchial tuberculosis, we need corticosteroids to prevent this tracheobronchial stenosis. So give it for at least 2 months, the total duration of therapy. Next, कितने हो गए? 1 2 3. 1 TB meningitis, second pericardial, then miliary, 4th pleural, 5th endobronchial. This is 6th. I hope you are not tired. I want to take one more question after this. 6th is adrenal insufficiency. So there is very commonly the adrenal glands are involved in tuberculosis. So adrenal gland involvement is very common in tuberculosis, and this leads to adrenal insufficiency, and this adrenal insufficiency may ultimately lead to Addisonian crisis. Okay, so you have to give glucocorticosteroids replacement therapy, and here you have to give glucocorticosteroid not once, not twice, but 3 times per day. दिन में 3 बार आपको glucocorticosteroid देना होगा. ठीक है, तो सबसे पहले you will give जब patient उठ जाएगा, just at waking, patient उठा, you have to give 10 to 20 milligram, and what you are preferring here is hydrocortisone. So why just at waking? Because you have to mimic the physiological. Physiologically हमारा cortisol level जो होता है just at waking पे बढ़ा हुआ रहता है. Okay, so उस physiological peak को mimic करने के लिए जैसे ही patient उठा, हमने उसको एक डोज दे दी. So this is to mimic physiological peak. Second कब दोगे? मिड डे में, जब वो दिन का खाना खाएगा, दोपहर का खाना खाएगा. So मिड डे में how much you will give? You will give 5 milligram of hydrocortisone. और अगर prednisolone देना चाहते हो तो you can give 3 to 5 milligram of prednisolone also. And third कब दोगे? At 6 p.m. क्योंकि again the cortisol levels are shooting at this p.m. So we will give 5 milligram at 6 p.m. Okay, so this is how you have to give corticosteroids in adrenal insufficiency. Okay, then 7th, iris. Is iris? immune reactivity, hypersensitivity to AKT. So this iris syndrome, you need corticosteroids. Iris is usually associated with HIV. So HIV with iris. Okay. So HIV with iris. So first, temporary. Sorry, some mistake. So first, temporary, stop your ART and then start with glucocorticosteroids 1 milligram per kg per day, prednisolone for 1 to 2 weeks, and then gradual tapering. Okay. Okay. Some other causes in which we need corticosteroid. So one is your hypersensitivity to AKT. So hypersensitivity to AKT. So if patient is having hypersensitivity reactions, means there will be severe generalized erythematous rashes, or there is angioedema. These require systemic corticosteroids. Okay. So generalized erythematous rash है, angioedema है, तो corticosteroids. Then again very important, ocular tuberculosis. So you can use either eye drops, that is prednisolone acetate. Eye drops can also be used in ocular TB, or you can also use systemic corticosteroids may be needed. So this completes the topic of role of corticosteroid. I hope you will apply this in your daily practice also. So please don't unnecessarily give corticosteroids in an pleural effusion case or ascitic case, or ऐसे हर कहीं पे नहीं दे देना, ठीक है? And winding up with today's class, I just want to take one more important question. See, two questions that were asked in this paper was prevention of venous thromboembolism and well score. So these two are related to pulmonary embolism. Now, pulmonary embolism is a very important topic. I want to take this topic completely as a whole. So one complete lecture this week only I'll be taking for pulmonary embolism, probably this week or next week. Before that, last few questions that were asked in this paper was severity assessment of acute exacerbation asthma, then mechanical ventilation in asthma, mechanical ventilation in COPD, then method of weaning, cause of difficult to wean, and mechanical ventilation settings in COPD. So all these ventilatory questions will be for our next class. So next class again is very, very important because I'll be taking all the ventilator-induced lung injury. So all the ventilatory related questions will be covered in the next class, and that will be the end of June 2021 paper, and then we'll move on to the next paper. Okay, so the last class for this today, last topic for this today's class is I want to take is your the question that was asked was lung volume reduction surgery in COPD. people are malpracticing